No one in the quadrant had ever seen the beast stop moving. When it finally did, the battlefield went silent, not because the war was over, but because every living thing was trying to understand how a single unarmed human had just stepped between extinction and survival. The creature was called Razkar in 1,000 frightened languages. A living engine of destruction. Grown, not born. Released only when a system needed to be erased. Its hide shimmered like black glass under burning skies. Each breath melted stone. Each step cracked the planet's crust like thin ice. And it was awake. Commander Veelrix of the Aserai Coalition stood frozen on the ridge. Forearms locked around her command rail. Eyes wide behind her tactical visor. Her fleet was gone. Her soldiers were gone. Her orders meant nothing now. Razkar had already ended this war. It simply hadn't finished killing yet. The ground shook as the beast lowered its massive head, jaws opening to release another wave of annihilating fire. Veelrix closed her eyes. Then someone laughed. It was soft. Human. Wrong. Veelrix's eyes snapped open. From the smoke and wreckage below, a lone figure walked forward. No armor. No shield. No weapon. Just a human male in a scorched jacket. Hands raised, not in surrender, but in greeting. Several officers screamed for him to stop. Others tried to fire. Their weapons failed. Razkar's presence drowned all technology in static and fear. The human kept walking. Veelrix whispered, "What is he doing?" The human stopped 10 paces from the beast. 10 paces from death. Razkar leaned down. Its shadow swallowing him whole. Its eyes burned like twin suns. Ancient and empty and hungry. The human tilted his head and spoke. "Hey," he said calmly. "There you are." The beast hesitated. That alone shattered 1,000 years of doctrine. Razkar did not hesitate. It destroyed. Yet now its claws paused midair. Heat flickering uncertainly along its spine. The human reached into his jacket. Veelrix gasped. Several officers fainted. He pulled out a small metal cylinder, dented and burned. A ration container. He twisted it open. A faint smell drifted across the battlefield. Salt. Protein. Something oddly sweet. The human tossed it gently onto the cracked ground. "For you," he said. "You missed breakfast." Razkar lowered its head. The movement was slow. Careful. Almost curious. It sniffed the ration. Then, impossibly, it nudged the container with its snout. Veelrix's knees buckled. Her species had dissected legends, myths, and survivors' madness. Nothing had ever described this. The human smiled. "Yeah," he said softly. "That's the good stuff." The beast made a sound. Not a roar. A rumble. Low. Deep. Uncertain. The sound of something ancient trying to remember what it was like before it was made into a weapon.
Lay down.
The impact shook the planet. But it did not attack. The human stepped forward and placed one hand against the creature's burning hide. Smoke curled around his fingers. His skin blistered. He did not pull away. "I know," he murmured. "They hurt you first." Veelrix couldn't breathe. The War Council had insisted the creature had no emotions. No memory. No will. Yet Razkar closed its eyes. The human leaned against its massive head, as if resting against a tired animal after a long journey. "My name's Elias Moore," he said aloud, not looking back at the stunned armies watching from afar. "I'm human." He glanced up at the beast. "And this is a survivor." Silence rolled across the battlefield like a wave. Elias turned his head slightly toward the ridge. "You can stop aiming now," he called. "He doesn't like it." Veelrix slowly raised one shaking hand. Every targeting reticle vanished. Razkar exhaled. The heat receded. For the first time since its creation, the galaxy's deadliest creature was calm. Veelrix descended the ridge alone. Every step felt unreal, as if she were walking through a broken simulation. She stopped a careful distance away. "What did you do?" she asked. Elias looked at her, surprised. "I listened," he said. "No one ever does." She swallowed. "That thing destroyed 3 systems." Elias nodded. "Because that's what it was built for." He looked back at Razkar. They never taught it how to stop. The beast shifted slightly, tail curling inward instead of lashing outward. Its breathing slowed. Vilrix felt something crack inside her chest. Fear, giving way to awe. "You bonded with it," she whispered. Elias shrugged. "I helped it." That answer terrified her more than any weapon. Coalition sensors suddenly lit up. Incoming signals. War fleets. Observers. The galaxy was watching now. Vilrix straightened. "They'll come for you," she said. "For it. They'll want control." Elias smiled faintly. "They always do." Razkar opened one eye. The ground hummed beneath them. Not with rage, but with warning. Elias rested his hand against its hide again. "Easy," he whispered. "We're not done yet." Vilrix realized something then. A truth so heavy it made her hands shake. This wasn't the end of the war. This was the beginning of something far worse. For every empire that believed, power only came from fear. Because humanity had just proven something impossible. They didn't conquer the galaxy's greatest monster. They understood it. And the galaxy would never recover from that revelation. The first fleet arrived in silence. Not because they were respectful, but because even they were afraid to be the first to speak. While Razkar lay curled like a sleeping mountain, with a human's hand resting on its head. From the shattered horizon, 3 massive carriers cut through the clouds. Their hulls marked with the golden-black crest of the High Dominion. The same rulers who had funded the creature's creation. Then pretended it was only a myth. Commander Vilrix watched their descent with a tightening jaw. The Dominion never came to save lives. They came to collect assets. Behind her, her surviving soldiers stood in broken lines. Weapons lowered, bodies trembling. Eyes unable to stop staring at the impossible sight below. A Dominion shuttle landed first. Its doors opened with ceremonial slowness. As if arrogance itself powered the hinges. Out stepped Archregent Tharos Ven. Tall, draped in pristine robes. With eyes like polished steel and a smile that didn't reach them. He didn't look at the dead. He didn't look at the burned plains. He looked only at the beast. Then he looked at Elias. "Well," Tharos said smoothly, voice carried by external amplifiers. "So the rumors were true." Vilrix marched down the slope and placed herself between Tharos and Elias. "This is coalition territory," she snapped. "You have no authority here." Tharos waved a hand as if she were dust. "Commander Vilrix. Still alive. How inconvenient." His gaze returned to Elias like a hook. "You," he said. "Human." Elias didn't move from where he stood by Razkar. His jacket still smoked at the edges. His palm was wrapped in a rag soaked with cooling gel. But he kept it on the beast anyway. As if removing it would feel like betrayal. "Hi," Elias said. "You're late." Tharos blinked once. Few people ever spoke to him like that and survived the sentence. "You will step away from the creature," Tharos ordered, calm and absolute. "It is Dominion property." Razkar's tail twitched. The ground answered with a low vibration. Elias sighed. "It's not property." Tharos smiled again. "Oh." "The creature was engineered in our labs. Bred for obedience. If it is calm, then you have found a method. Congratulations." He stepped closer, hands behind his back, confidence sharpened to a blade. "Now tell me what you did," Tharos said. "And you may keep your life." Vilrix's soldiers stiffened. They knew that voice. The voice of a ruler who believed mercy was weakness. Elias looked up at Tharos. Then, very slowly, he laughed. It wasn't mocking. It was tired. You think I used a trick, Elias said. You think I hacked its brain. Tharos's eyes narrowed. A method is a method. Elias nodded toward Razkar's scarred flank, where old burn marks and metal implant seams were visible beneath the hide. You see those? Elias asked. That's where you tried to erase it every time it didn't perform right. Tharos's smile twitched. Elias continued, voice steady now. You built a monster. Then you punished it for being one. Razkar's eye opened again. And this time, the eye focused on Tharos. A quiet, terrible attention. Veelrix felt the air grow heavier, like the world was holding its breath. Tharos's guards lifted shock lances. Their hands shook. Back, Veelrix warned them. You do not threaten it. Tharos ignored her. He raised a small device, black and sleek, and pressed his thumb to it. A high, sharp tone rang out, too high for comfort. A frequency that made Veelrix's teeth ache. Razkar flinched. Its muscles tensed. Its claws dug into the ground. The calm shattered in one instant. Elias's head snapped toward Tharos. Stop, Elias said, voice suddenly cold. Now. Tharos's smile widened in triumph. You see? It responds. It remembers its leash. Razkar's breathing sped up. The beast's chest rose and fell like a storm building. Veelrix saw what was about to happen. The old instinct, the forced obedience, turning into panic, then rage. And once Razkar panicked, it didn't stop at one target. It erased everything. Elias moved faster than anyone expected. He stepped directly in front of Razkar's face, close enough that its heated breath could turn bone to ash. He raised both hands, palms open. Hey, he said, loud and clear. Look at me. Tharos kept pressing the device. The tone intensified. Razkar's eyes flickered like a dying star, caught between pain and programming. Elias's voice softened, like he was speaking to a frightened child. You're not in the lab, he said. You're here. You're safe. You're not alone. Veelrix's throat tightened. It shouldn't have worked. No creature built for war should understand words like that. But Razkar's head lowered slightly. Elias took a slow step forward. It's okay, he murmured. Breathe with me. He inhaled. Slow. Deliberate. Then exhaled. He repeated it. 1 breath. 2. 3. Razkar's chest began to match the rhythm. The trembling stopped. The claws loosened their grip on the earth. The fire that had started to glow in its throat faded back into darkness. Elias didn't look away. He didn't shout orders. He didn't demand obedience. He offered calm. And the monster took it. Tharos's smile vanished. What are you? He hissed. Elias finally turned, eyes hard. A human, he said simply. And we don't control things by breaking them. Tharos's guards raised their lances again, angry now. Seize him, Tharos snapped. Take the human. Bring the creature under restraint. Veelrix moved instantly, plasma blade snapping into her hand. No, she said. Her voice rang like iron. Tharos stared at her in disbelief. You defy the Dominion. Veelrix's 4 arms tightened around her weapon. I defy anyone who wants to restart a massacre, she said. Tharos's eyes turned colder. You are outnumbered. Veelrix didn't flinch. We have something you don't, Elias said quietly. Tharos glanced toward Razkar. The beast lifted its head. Not with rage, but with a deliberate, watchful stillness. The kind of stillness that promised. I remember you. Tharos stepped back without meaning to. Veelrix saw it. He was scared. Elias bent and picked up the empty ration container from the ground, then held it in his fingers as if it were proof. I'm not giving you a method, Elias said. Because it's not a method. He pointed gently toward Razkar's scars again. It's a conversation you were too cruel to learn. Tharos's face darkened. "If you do not cooperate," he said, "we will take it by force." Elias nodded. "Then you'll die," he said. "Not because Razkar is evil, but because you never learned the difference between fear and respect." A new sound interrupted them. A sharp beep from Vilrix's command pad. Her officer, pale and sweating, ran down the slope. "Commander," the officer gasped. "Dominion satellites just locked onto this location." Vilrix's blood ran cold. Tharos's expression shifted into satisfied cruelty. "Good," he said. "Let the galaxy see what happens when a human steals from the Dominion." The sky above them flickered. A massive orbital weapon array, hidden until now, began to power up. Not aimed at Elias. Not aimed at Vilrix. Aimed at Razkar. Vilrix's voice turned sharp. "They're going to kill it." Tharos's smile returned. "And if you stand in the way," he said, "you will be collateral." Elias looked up at the sky. Then he looked at Razkar. His hand returned to the beast's hide. "Okay," he whispered. "They're trying to hurt you again." Razkar's eyes narrowed. Not with blind rage, but with understanding. Elias straightened and faced Vilrix. "We can't fight that fleet," Vilrix said urgently. "Not like this." Elias nodded once. "We're not going to fight them like they expect," he said. Vilrix stared at him. "What do you mean?" Elias's jaw tightened. "Humans don't win by matching strength," he said. "We win by changing the rules." Above them, the orbital array's core began to glow. A countdown started in Vilrix's HUD. 00:59. 00:58. 00:57. 1 minute until the Dominion fired. Elias placed both hands on Razkar's head and leaned close. "Listen to me," he whispered. "I need you to trust me." Razkar's massive face lowered to him. A monster made for destruction. Waiting for a human to tell it what to do next. Vilrix felt chills run through her entire body. Because she realized the truth. The galaxy's most feared creature was no longer the Dominion's weapon. It was humanity's ally. And the Dominion was about to learn what that meant. The countdown burned red across every display in the sky. 00:42. 00:41. Commander Vilrix felt the old instinct rise in her chest, the one drilled into every officer since birth. Fight. Fire. Destroy before being destroyed. But nothing in her training covered this. A human standing calmly beneath an orbital weapon. A living extinction engine waiting for instructions. And a war that could be decided in less than a minute. Elias closed his eyes and pressed his forehead against Razkar's massive skull. The heat was still there, but softer now, like a hearth instead of a furnace. "They're afraid of you," he whispered. "They always were. That's why they made you hurt things instead of letting you choose." Razkar's breath slowed. Deep. Controlled. Its tail curled inward, not in submission, but restraint. Above them, the Dominion array shifted, charging conduits flaring like artificial suns. Vilrix's comm unit crackled to life. "Commander," a coalition officer said, voice shaking. "We're detecting a cascade charge. That weapon will burn through the crust." Vilrix looked at Elias. "Whatever you're planning," she said, "do it now." Elias nodded. He stepped back just enough to look into Razkar's eyes. "You feel that pressure in your head," he said quietly. "The noise. The commands." Razkar let out a low rumble. Yes, it did understand. Elias swallowed. "That's them," he said. "Trying to make you afraid again." The beast's claws dug into the ground, then stopped. Elias raised one hand. "You don't have to obey," he said. "You don't have to fight." Vilrix's eyes widened. "Elias," she hissed, "if it doesn't fight, we die." Elias didn't look away from the beast. "I know," he said. "But if it fights the way they expect, the galaxy never changes." The countdown hit 0:20. Elias took a breath. Razkar, he said clearly, speaking its name the way one spoke to a person, not a weapon. They taught you how to destroy. He placed his palm flat against its hide. I'm asking you to show them something else. The beast went still. For one terrible moment, Veilrix thought it was deciding whether to obey the old pain or the new trust. Then Razkar lifted its head. Not toward the ground. Not toward the armies. Up. Toward the sky. Toward the weapon aimed at its heart. Energy gathered along its spine, but it didn't flare outward in fire. Instead, the air itself bent. Veilrix's sensors screamed. "Commander!" An officer shouted. "The creature is generating a containment field. No, wait, this isn't an attack pattern." The Dominion array fired. A pillar of white light tore down from orbit. Veilrix threw herself forward instinctively. The beam struck Razkar dead center. And stopped. Not absorbed. Not deflected. Held. The light bent around the beast like water hitting stone, dispersing harmlessly into the sky. Silence fell. Then alarms. From orbit. Veilrix's HUD flooded with new signals, Dominion ships losing power, systems scrambling. "What's happening?" she demanded. An engineer's voice came through, half laughing, half horrified. "The beam's feedback loop is destabilizing their array. The creature isn't fighting the weapon. It's refusing to participate in the energy exchange." Elias stared upward, stunned. "Razkar," he whispered. "You're not blocking it, you're letting it go." The beast lowered its head slightly, as if acknowledging the words. In orbit, the Dominion array fractured. Panels peeled away. Energy bled into nothing. One by one, the targeting systems went dark. On the ground, Archregent Tharros stumbled backward. "No," he snarled. "That's not possible." He slammed commands into his control pad. Nothing responded. Razkar turned its gaze toward him. Not angry. Aware. Tharros froze. For the first time in his life, he stood in front of something that could destroy him. And chose not to. Veilrix stepped forward, voice steady now. "The galaxy is watching," she said. "And they just saw your ultimate weapon refuse you." Tharros's face twisted. "This changes nothing," he spat. "We'll build another." Elias shook his head. "No," he said. "You won't." Tharros laughed bitterly. "You think this ends empires?" Elias looked around. At the ruined battlefield. At the stunned soldiers. At the creature who had chosen restraint over annihilation. "I think people will start asking why a human could do this," he said. "And you never could." Razkar shifted its weight. The ground trembled, not with threat, but with warning. Tharros's guards stepped back. One by one. The Archregent looked around and realized something terrifying. No one was willing to stand between him and the beast. Not anymore. "This is treason," Tharros hissed at Veilrix. She lifted her chin. "Then I'll answer for it," she said. "But not today." Dominion ships began retreating from orbit. Not in formation. Not with dignity. They fled. The sky cleared. For the first time since the war began. The air felt lighter. Elias let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "You did it," he whispered to Razkar. The beast lowered its massive head until it touched the ground in front of him. A gesture not of submission, but trust. Veilrix felt something settle in her chest. Hope. Dangerous. Uncontrollable. "This will spread," she said quietly. "What you did here, it can't be erased." Elias nodded. "I know," he said. "That's why they're really afraid." Coalition soldiers began lowering their weapons completely. Some stared at Razkar in awe. Others stared at Elias like he was something newly discovered. A human who didn't conquer. A monster who chose not to kill. Veilrix activated her recorder. "For the record," she said, voice firm. "The Coalition witnessed the Dominion lose control of its weapon today." She looked at Elias. And humanity showed the galaxy a new kind of strength. Elias glanced up at the sky once more. This isn't over, he said. Veelrix nodded. No, she agreed. It's just begun. Razkar let out a low, steady rumble. Not a roar of war, but the sound of something ancient waking up to choice. And across the galaxy, empires began to wonder what else humanity might teach. The things they were never meant to understand. The galaxy did not sleep after what happened on Skarn Delta. It watched. Signals echoed across systems faster than any fleet ever could. Footage leaked. Sensor logs spread. Whispers turned into arguments, and arguments into fear. A creature designed to erase worlds had refused to kill. A human had stood in front of it and lived. That single truth cracked the foundations of power everywhere. On the Coalition flagship Vigilant Echo, the atmosphere was heavier than vacuum. Not from damage, but from tension. Razkar lay within a reinforced hangar bay the size of a city plaza. Not contained. Accommodated. Engineers pretended not to stare. Soldiers pretended not to pray. Elias sat on a crate near the beast's massive forelimb, back against warm obsidian hide, slowly wrapping fresh bandages around his burned hand. Razkar watched him with one glowing eye, unblinking, attentive. You're getting better at not panicking, Elias said quietly. That's progress. The beast released a low sound, not quite a rumble, not quite a breath. Approval, maybe. Commander Veelrix stood at the edge of the bay, arms folded, eyes sharp. She had commanded fleets, survived assassinations, and stared down annihilation weapons before, but nothing in her life felt as unstable as this moment. You understand what you've done, she said. Elias didn't look up. I stopped someone from getting hurt. Veelrix clicked her mandibles in irritation. You changed the balance of power. That too, Elias admitted. Before she could respond, alarms pulsed, short, controlled, deliberate. Not a threat alarm. A council alert. Veelrix activated the holotable. The projections flared to life, filling the bay with towering figures. Ambassadors, warlords, artificial minds wrapped in light, beings older than some stars. Some appeared calm. Others radiated fury so intense it distorted the holograms. One voice cut through first, cold and precise. This creature must be destroyed. Another followed, layered and echoing. No. It must be controlled. A third, quieter but sharper than the rest. The human must be removed. Elias sighed and stood, wiping his hands on his jacket. Hi, he said, raising one bandaged hand in a small wave. Nice to finally meet everyone who's been arguing about my execution. The projections reacted instantly. Several recoiled. Others leaned forward. Veelrix spoke before chaos could erupt. This council is convened under emergency statute, she said. You will conduct yourselves accordingly. A tall, crystalline envoy rotated toward Elias. You have violated every containment protocol, it said. You risk galactic collapse. Elias shrugged. Funny, he said. That's what they told me right before they made him. He gestured toward Razkar. The beast lifted its head slightly. The chamber fell silent. Even the oldest beings felt it. The pressure, the awareness, the simple fact that if Razkar chose violence, no one present could stop it. But it didn't move. Elias continued. You all built your power on fear, he said. You scared people into obedience. Scared creatures into slavery. His voice was calm. That scared them more. You're not afraid of Razkar, Elias said. You're afraid that fear doesn't work anymore. A ripple moved through the council. One of the Dominion representatives appeared, smaller now, less confident than Tharos had been. The human manipulates it, the envoy said. This is deception. Elias shook his head. No, he replied. This is what happens when you stop treating living things like tools. Razkar shifted, lowering its head closer to him. Not aggressively. Protectively. That movement sent shockwaves through the council. Veelrix watched realization spread across alien faces. If this bond held, if it could not be broken by pain or command signals, then empires had just lost their greatest leverage. A new voice entered the chamber, old, heavy, layered with authority. "There is another concern," it said. "Others like it." The room stiffened. Veelrix's eyes snapped to the speaker. "What do you mean?" The voice continued. Razkar was not unique. It was one of many. Elias felt his stomach drop. "How many?" he asked. A pause. "Enough." Silence crashed down harder than any explosion. Elias slowly turned toward Razkar. The beast's eye darkened slightly, not with rage, but with something far worse. Memory. Pain. Elias clenched his fists. "They're still out there," he said. "Being used." The council erupted. Calls to accelerate production. Calls to erase evidence. Calls to hunt Elias down before this spread further. Veelrix slammed her clawed hand onto the console. "Enough." The chamber stilled. She looked at Elias. "If others exist," she said carefully, "then what you've done cannot stay isolated." Elias nodded. "That's the point." He stepped forward, placing one hand against Razkar's hide. "You don't need armies," he said to the council. "You need people willing to listen." The crystalline envoy pulsed angrily. "You propose humans handle them," it demanded. "You are fragile. Short-lived." Elias smiled. "Yeah," he said. "And we still keep showing up." Razkar let out a deep, steady sound. Agreement. Veelrix felt something shift in her chest again. Not hope this time. Resolve. "You're asking for war," one envoy warned. Elias shook his head. "No," he said. "I'm offering an alternative." He looked straight at the council. "Because if you try to kill him," he said softly, "you won't just be fighting a monster." The beast's eyes brightened. "You'll be fighting everyone who learns this lesson." The council fractured into chaos. Some disconnected instantly. Others stayed, silent and calculating. Veelrix deactivated the holotable. The hangar bay felt quieter, but heavier. "You just painted a target on humanity," she said. Elias exhaled. "Humanity's used to that." Razkar lowered its massive head until it rested beside him. Veelrix looked at them both. "For what it's worth," she said, "the coalition will stand with you." Elias met her gaze. "I know," he said, "because you saw it happen." Outside the bay, alarms sounded again. Different this time. Long-range sensors. Multiple jump signatures. Not Dominion. Not Coalition. Unknown. Veelrix checked the display, blood running cold. "They're coming," she said. "Other powers. Other hunters." Elias placed his hand firmly against Razkar's hide. "Good," he said quietly. The beast rose to its full height, calm and terrifying and awake. Because this time, it wasn't answering fear. It was answering trust. And the galaxy was about to find out what that truly meant. The unknown fleets arrived without warning, without banners, without broadcast demands. They emerged from jump space like predators that had learned patience. Sleek, angular ships that bent light around their hulls and refused to identify themselves. Commander Veelrix stared at the tactical display, her pulse steady but heavy. "These are not empires," she said quietly. "They are collectors." Elias stood beside her, Razkar towering behind them, its presence causing every sensor to behave like a frightened animal. The beast was calm, but alert. It felt the others before they appeared. It always had. "They've been watching," Elias said. "Waiting for proof." Veelrix glanced at him. "Proof of what?" "That the monsters can choose," he replied. "And that choice can spread." The first transmission cut through the bridge, filtered, layered, stripped of emotion. "Human. Step away from the asset." Elias leaned closer to the console. "No," he said. A pause followed. Not confusion. Calculation. You are statistically irrelevant, the voice replied. The creature is not. It will be reclaimed. Razkar shifted its weight. The deck plates groaned under the movement, but it did not threaten. It simply stood closer to Elias, massive form angling subtly between him and the threat beyond the hull. Veelrix felt something tighten in her throat. They don't want control, she realized. They want silence. The collectors fired first. Not with planet killers. Not with beams. They launched signals. Waves of encoded pain, designed to bypass reason, flood memory, and trigger obedience buried deep in engineered minds. Razkar stiffened. The air vibrated with an old scream that never reached sound. Elias didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, placing both hands against the beast's chest, right where its core heat pulsed beneath obsidian hide. "Hey," he said, loud enough for the bridge to hear. "I'm here." The signal intensified. Razkar's breathing faltered. Elias leaned in, voice steady despite the pain scorching through his bandaged hand. "Look at me," he said. "Not them." Veelrix watched in disbelief as Elias synced his breathing again, slow and deliberate, anchoring himself like a living metronome. The beast's chest stuttered, then followed. The collector's voice returned, sharper now. "You cannot overwrite design." Elias shook his head. "No," he said. "But you can outgrow it." Razkar roared. Not in rage. In defiance. The sound rippled outward, not as a weapon, but as a declaration, a resonance that disrupted the collector's signal patterns. Their ships flickered, systems scrambling as something ancient and alive rejected the commands etched into its bones. Across the galaxy, others heard it. Not with ears. With minds like Razkar's. The collectors hesitated. That was their mistake. Razkar did not attack the ships. It turned its head toward open space and released a pulse, pure, uncontrolled resonance. Not destructive, but communicative. A call. Veelrix's sensors exploded with data. Multiple responses. Far away. Scattered. Hidden. Alive. Elias felt his breath catch. "They heard you," he whispered. The collector's formation broke. For the first time, they sounded uncertain. "Terminate the human," the voice ordered. Weapons powered up. Veelrix moved instantly, slamming commands into her console. "All ships," she barked. "Defensive screen. Full broadcast. Send everything we recorded, now." Coalition vessels lit up, data streams surging outward. Footage of Skarn Delta. Of Razkar refusing violence. Of a human standing in front of extinction and surviving. The collectors fired. Razkar moved. Not fast. Purposeful. It stepped forward and placed itself fully between the bridge and incoming fire. Energy crashed against its hide and dispersed, bleeding harmlessly into space. Elias felt the impact like a thunderclap through his bones. "You don't have to protect me," he said through clenched teeth. Razkar lowered its head slightly. It chose to. The collectors began to retreat, not in panic, but in strategy. They had what they needed. Confirmation. That the bond was real. That it could not be easily broken. That humanity was dangerous in a way no weapon could predict. As their ships vanished, silence reclaimed the stars. The bridge crew slowly exhaled, some laughing shakily, others sinking into seats like gravity had finally returned. Veelrix turned to Elias. "You just told the entire galaxy how to undo their worst sins," she said. Elias nodded, exhausted. "Good." Razkar settled behind them, lowering itself into a resting position that no longer crushed steel or warped decks. Engineers stared. Soldiers stared harder. "They're coming," Veelrix said. "Not just collectors. Others like them." Elias looked at Razkar, then at the stars. "Then we listen," he said. "One at a time." Days later, the first signal arrived. Not hostile. Not coded in pain. A single, simple pattern. A response. Veelrix watched as Elias translated it slowly, carefully. "They're asking," he said, voice quiet. If it's safe to stop. Razkar lifted its head and released a low, steady sound, calm, grounding, unmistakably gentle. Elias sent it back. Yes. Across the galaxy, something shifted. Not a revolution. A realization. That power built on fear was brittle. That control without understanding always failed. That even monsters remembered kindness. Veilrix recorded the final log herself. Let it be known, she said, that humanity did not conquer the galaxy's deadliest creatures. She looked at Elias. At Razkar. They reminded them they were alive. Elias rested his hand against warm obsidian hide one last time and smiled. The war didn't end that day. But the monsters stopped answering orders. And the galaxy would spend the rest of its history trying to understand how a fragile species called humans changed everything without firing a single shot.